Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Game Hub. I'm your host Gamer K, and yes, as you can obviously tell, it is still Villain Month here in the Game Hub. And as you may have noticed from last week's video, I got myself a new do because in Canada, it is difficult to have, in the cold weather, to have bushy hair. But that may be just me. And continuing with the Villain Month regime, we are going into another ranking video, one that is not going to take as long as my previous ones, which were every single Ghostbusters enemy and every single boss in Cuphead. And oh boy, I am a glutton for punishment for doing those videos. But this one's going to be a little bit less longer. Depends on how long I'll talk about each topic. This one is going to be going into one of my favorite Assassin's Creed games in recent years. And yes, Valhalla was great. And all honesty, I can't wait for what they do next. I hear it's supposed to be in Japan. And for the love of Lord, please, please, do something great that will make Valhalla look like just a stepping stone to bringing back the great franchise after the disaster that was Odyssey. But we're going back 2 games after Valhalla, going into the world of Assassin's Creed Origins, one of my favorites from the new generation, and honestly, one I was more skeptical about. You know what I'm talking about. But overall, it was fantastic. And the list of its villains were so good. The Order of Ancients being the predecessors of the Templars from way back when. And the Egyptian branch of this brought some of the, honestly, some of the coolest characters to ever be in Assassin's Creed. Especially, even though it's not as much. And then the other games kind of did a lot more with them. These ones were really, really good. Slightly. So basically what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be ranking every Order of Ancients member in Origins because I can't remember all of them from Valhalla, and I'm not doing the ones for the DLC for Odyssey. I'll be doing those technically in their own thing when I do the Odyssey DLC reviews. And so I'll be going over my least favorite to my favorite, and this taking into account all their character, their schemes, how they were done within said sections of the game, because there aren't chapters anymore in the games. Or at least not in Origins, at least. Like, we just go about and defeating them whenever we can. And so, obviously, hang on, because I will be explaining a lot of their goals, and some of them are supposed to be kept secret until later. Nope. Spoiler warning is in effect for this video. For those of you who haven't played Assassin's Creed Origins, and if you haven't, I'd say you get to it because it's one of the best games out there. So, let's continue. Not continue, but let's get down to this list. Starting off the list is kind of a tie between Akateon and Ketesos. And I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing some of these names. I mean, a majority of them I won't because I know how to pronounce them. But these two, I don't understand why they aren't in this game. For those of you who don't understand, throughout the game, we will be finding information on our said targets, which will be captured by the images of what animal code name they're under, which I really like. There's about 12 of them. Wait. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 12, exactly. We only get to kill 10. And why is that, you may ask? Well, I'm going to explain to you, because the 2 I'm mentioning are killed off-screen by Aya, Bayek's wife, who turns out to be one of the super cool assassins of ancient times, and kind of has a direct descendant to Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Very well done of making that work, but still, it doesn't explain having these 2 not being used in the game. We don't get to see them except for their faded, because once you defeat one of the Order of Ancients, their thing on their targets list will go red, and you'll just see their faces in red, and you'll just hear like a little bio on them a little bit, which I kind of enjoyed how Odyssey And Valhalla kind of fixed that with a longer description and having to see the character. But both of these guys are the Vulture and the Ram. And again, they're killed off screen by Aya. We get to play like one mission of hers in the beginning, which is a stupid, absolutely pointless boat ship battle mission, which is boring, it's irritating, and it has no point in being here other than just showing how she got to a certain location. And we don't even get to kill one of them. Like, it doesn't make sense. We don't get to see their perspective of everything, of the Order. We don't get to see what their roles were. From what I gather in this, they were one of 5 people who were in the vault at the cutscene that shows Bayek's rage having his son being murdered by the Order of Ancients and hunting down the said snake. The snake ended up being just a code name for the Order of Ancients itself and not any of its members. And apparently these 2 idiots, I don't even have a picture for them because, again, they're not even in the game at all. Just their picture is. So they start off this week, at the bottom of the list, because they're not shown, they're not used at all, and all we know is that they were 2 of the members that were in the vault that were responsible for. Shoot, I'm forgetting their son's name, but anyway, their son's death. So, yeah, Ram and the Vulture would have been cool scenes of killing them, but, you know, they ended up not doing it. Continue. Coming up next on the list is Medunamon. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing some of these names. A.K.A. the Ibis, which is the second character we get to kill, who is technically an oracle who can who can lead the people into the future, who is actually just a corrupt religious idol within Seawall, which is where Bayek, the small oasis town where Bayek is. Why is it we always start off with a little village and then we go off into the great wide world? Didn't we get enough of that from Pokemon? Although his assassination is pretty basic, we just infiltrate his temple and find him and easily get rid of him, which is pretty fun. And then we get to see Bayek's, much like how Ezio went overboard with Umberto in Assassin's Creed 2. Bayek loses it when it comes to this guy because he is one of the guys that went with him into the... Yeah, 5. No, 6. I can't remember how many people were in the vault. It doesn't matter. Basically, killing him is just a footnote in order to get to another member. And all honesty, the big scene that they do is okay. It just shows Bayek's anger towards him and beating him to death with a piece of Eden is kind of cool a little bit. I mean, it's all done in the cutscene, so we don't actually get to do it. But still, it just shows how far Bayek's come within the game from how he treats the dead to later. Much like, again, how Ezio treated Umberto and Viri in the Assassin's Creed 2, and how he treats all the people he gets rid of later on in the other games. It really shows a progression of their emotions and their state of how they treat them. I'm just going to say that. Coming up is the first guy we kill in the game, and again, this is done via the opening cutscene of the game, and it's done very beautifully, which would be Lujic the Heron. And after a while, we obviously get a lot of side missions within the game, and he kind of makes it a return, whereas someone is honoring him, and it's a little disturbing with all the heron corpses and everything in the tomb, which is in one of the pyramids, I believe, if that's the case. But it's done very well, and the opening cutscene that introduces us to Bayek and what he's doing, it's fantastic. He starts by crossing off his name that he tattooed onto his name, and then removing it with an arrow, which I gotta give it to Bayek. He's a badass character, and this just shows his dedication to the cause he's going for. And then Lujic throws a knife at him, which he catches in the mask. And then he makes this big speech about he will never sleep until he finds all that are responsible. Everyone who sniffed the air that day in Seawall. And then just rams the mask into his face, blade going in. I will say this, Bayek has a lot of anger issues within the first three targets of the game, and it shows, but it's done pretty well afterwards, which is done very beautifully. I gotta admit, I can't deny it. Next up on the list is Eudoros, aka the Hippo. We mistake him as the snake after going into his stuff and finding out, once we get into Alexandria, we find out that we believe he's the snake that caused I can't remember the son's name for the life of me. I can't remember. And one thing that makes Eudoros' assassination a little bit more amazing is because we get the first official release of the hidden blade, and via completing the mission, we see why the assassins removed the ring finger afterwards. It was all an accident. First off, we go in completely blind and completely without weapons as we're infiltrating the bathhouse where Eudoros has his own little spot. So we gotta hide up top and jump down on him and eliminate him. After a little back and forth, Eudoros explains that the snake will never be fully defeated. And then later on, it is revealed that he was right, that the snake was the order and not him directly. And being called the Hippo kind of makes up for it. Eudoros was a Cretan, a guy who was in the political realm a little bit, I believe. They didn't really examine too much on our first three targets throughout the game, which it's later on that we get more on the other ones throughout the game. So Eudoros kind of ended one part of the mission, but then set forth the entirety of hunting down the snake and all the other members on its scaly body. Coming up next is, okay, I never thought a final boss would be kind of downward on the food chain for me. But yeah, the lion, who's supposed to be the leader of the Order of Ancients in this section, and I'm not counting Julius Caesar, Flavius is, all honesty, one of the lamest head dudes of the Templar Order of Ancients order that I've ever seen in a video game. And yeah, I'm counting Crawford Starrick, and I know I praised him in my very first video, but overthinking it, Crawford not being there much and also having little of character is kind of one of the reasons why I don't like Flavius that much. Mostly because, yeah, he was the one that was at the temple that drove the knife into our son's body and ended up killing him. Flavius was under our nose for a good majority of the game, being Caesar and his second-in-command's bodyguard. And it went under our nose very much, and then it comes not out of nowhere, but at the same time, it doesn't feel like we earned the reveal. Like, there have been games in the past that have had reveals for me that were way, way better, that completely went over my head and under my nose, that I enjoyed that it happened, but this guy, you'd think he would have a little bit more. And his final battle, where he uses the Piece of Eden, kind of how Al-Mualim did in the first Assassin's Creed game, which was honestly a lot betterly done. It just kind of sucks that the very first leader of the Order of Ancients we get is somewhat forgettable. Like, if I didn't remember his name, that's the only thing I remember about him, and that his code name was the Lion, and he was a part of the Romans and not the Greeks or the Egyptians section. But he did this so he could have, control over everyone with the Apple of Eden. And I'm like, you suck as a villain. Okay, I'm just going to say right now, everyone above the leader here is way better in many, many ways. Both in design, both in character, and in plot. Coming up next in the list is one of the members that I picked for my top 13 bosses list. And do I still stand with it? Yes. Yes, I do. The Hyena, aka Halised, is quite honestly one of the better female villains in Assassin's Creed. For the main part, being that she doesn't really care that much about the Order of Ancients and what they want to do. She focuses more on trying to bring back her dead daughter. And all honesty, I sympathize, but at the same time I don't, because she actually controls the hyenas and sends them to attack people who stop her work. Basically collecting silica, which is the yellow crystal that you will find throughout the game, and bring it to the bottom in order to unlock the ones that came before us, those people in the game. And she plans on using it, thinking it's magic, and learn from this in order to bring back the dead. And all honesty, her battle is fantastic. Having it being done in the Naya Delta in Cairo, right where the pyramids are, in this sandy tomb where there's a sandstorm blowing. So you will need to keep an eye out for her and her hyenas, and using your longbow, using basically your instincts in order to find her. And it's just a blast to do. One thing I really love is her death scene, when we have that big cinematic scene where she pleads to the God of the Dead to grant her the passage to see her daughter. And then the hyenas that she loved so much and used end up dragging her into the darkness. I gotta admit, Origins does one thing fantastic, is bring in a new sense to the White Room of after the death scene, to get that back and forth dialogue between the hero and the villains. And they do it in such a spectacular way that I am glad was brought in Valhalla. And I hope in the next game they continue this streak, because why stop a good thing? Odyssey. But all in all, Halised kind of reflects Bayek a little bit. That he and her both did whatever they could to avenge or get their child back. And that's something that I think a lot of people not a lot of people, but it kind of has a good balance between Bayek and Halised. I'm just going to say that. Coming up next is, quite honestly, a boss fight I didn't think I was going to enjoy, nor a character I thought was going to be okay. It's another Grecian on the board, Poltinas, aka the Scorpion. He's more, again, another philosophical guy who was there in Siwa when the main event occurred. And we get to fight him on a frickin' war elephant. Yeah, because as we can see in his body type, he is not a fighter. He is on top of the elephant, and once we kill the elephant, he dies. Do we show how that happens, or do we just have to go up to him and just end it ourselves? That would have been a little bit better. So he's a little bit higher on the list, because, he doesn't do that much. Basically, along with Eudoros, Eudoros, he was basically manipulating Caesar and manipulating Ptolemy in order to join the orders, to be their puppets and everything. But he's not in the game very often. He's in an early cutscene, but we don't even think of it a little bit. And then when he's revealed in his death scene, yes, he was one of the guys who went into the vault in Siwa to see and everything. But he knew that they shouldn't have gone there, that they went too far. And on his death, he apologizes to Bayek of the events that transpired. And that he just wanted peace for Egypt. But then again, the peace is one thing that you preach, but your actions prove another. But again, I did enjoy that he was a gentleman scholar type guy. And even in his death, he didn't justify their actions. He admitted to his faults and that they made a mistake going in that way. Because if they never went to Siwa and accidentally caused Hemut? I can't remember his name for the life of me. If they didn't cause his death, Bayek would not have been going around and destroying them. This just shows how one event can change a whole chain of events that changes things for the better or worse. And I like how, being a Greek, he sees a coin and puts it in his mouth, because in ancient times, Greeks would put a coin in their mouth before death to pay the ferryman for their voyage across the river Styx. Man, I talked a lot about a character that barely showed up in the game. Let's talk about someone who is in the game a lot, and one I hate with a passion. Near the end of the list before we get to the final 3 that we kill, the Crocodile is a threat in Crocodilopolis, which honestly is one of my favorite areas of the game, mostly because of the Colosseum, the swamp grounds, the fact that a majority of the side missions pay tribute to Sobek and how people are using its children poorly. It's just beautifully done, and I just love it. Tainting the ancient crocodile, the white crocodile, finding a area where we find slaughtered crocodile for their skin and their teeth by smugglers. But going into the deeper part, in this section of the game, we meet a Greek guy and his Egyptian wife and their daughter, Shadia, who, honestly, it's good to see a character like Bayek be on a mission, but he still doesn't forget that he's human. He cracks jokes when he can. He enjoys the company of friends when he meets them. And this is a moment that always gets to me in the game. The Crocodile is the next member on the list, and we don't find out who it is until after we have to do the Colosseum section of the game, which is a pain in the behind to do, but it's always enjoyable. And then we find out the truth. Shadia, the little girl, found a ledger that her father and mother were hiding, which was evidence against the crocodile. And the crocodile doesn't like to be... basically, the crocodile pushes Shadia into the water with rocks, and we swim under the water and see her silhouette there, and you just feel your heart sink. And you can... Bayek lost one child, and this kid who was an innocent, and then his anger towards the gladiators in the arena, who he believes did this. I know I'm babbling a lot, but it gets to a point. After being confronted, the fighters admit that it was Berenike who is the crocodile. She is the one who pushed who threw the child into the river. And then just seeing this woman, another Cretan woman, my blood got boiling immediately. I get really invested in shows and in games. So when a character feels rage towards a certain character, I feel a certain rage. And it just elevates that level of immersion within the game that I really love. So the minute we find Berenike at her villa, along with our friend who helped us in the gladiator ring, eliminating her was the best thing for me. Mostly because of her scene. She doesn't even remember the people she eliminates in order to preserve the Order's businesses and connections. And she does so while laying up against the sacred crocodile, which is kind of a cool image, to be honest. And when Bayek loses it on her, threatening to destroy all like her, and forcing her, the last thing she'll remember is Shadia's name in such a way, it just shows that Bayek, again, is such a great character, even when dealing with an evil woman like this. It just goes to show that a good majority of the Order of Ancients members, some of them aren't forgivable. This woman is beyond redemption, and I hope Sobek devoured her soul on the way to the underworld. Oh boy, I get a lot of talking done. Next up is the one that you can choose before the crocodile or afterwards, the lizard, aka one of the priests of Anubis, Hetepi. Basically, in the city that we are in with the lizard, a curse has been plaguing the city, having women lose their children, people getting ill, the high priest's name being dragged through the mud, with the sacred Apis bull feeling sick. In all honesty, one of the coolest hallucination scenes ever in a video game that I think I'm going to put on a list. Just finding a giant snake is fantastic. And then finding Hetepi is honestly one of the easier ones to do. Basically, the curse of the lizard is nothing but bribes, manipulation, and some of the most disgusting thing ever, like putting dead, rotten flesh in food, it's disgusting, but it's, back in the day, that's what they did to appeal to the level of a curse. The high priest girls feeding the Apis bull apricot seeds, or what seeds are they? I think they're apricot seeds because they can cause illness in animals. And again, the lizard was threatening their brother, so they had no choice. I think it was apricots. I'm not sure why I'm getting so focused on that detail, but it's a pit from a fruit nonetheless. And again, throwing dead bodies into the sewers to pollute the water and to force the crocodiles to come and just plague the city. I will admit, Hetepi had an easier job of doing this, considering in order to disgrace the high priest, all he had to do was just pollute the city in the most obvious of ways. But because back then, everyone would think that it was just, a curse. And the lizard, finding him is exceptionally easy, considering he wears a blue scarf. With all the priests wearing Anubis masks, just look around for the one that's coughing a lot because he's got a cold. And I like that they even implemented that into even when he's dying, that he still has the cough. It's a nice added detail. And Hetepi's reasonings are to bring the world back to the ways of old Egypt and not what they are now. And that basically everyone is just a cow against the herdsman's whip. And I will admit, he does have a point that people do follow the status quo without even thinking. But what he did was disgusting and despicable. But all honesty, even though he didn't appear as much or at all until we defeat him, the impact of his death scene is really cool. Especially with this giant shadow of him going over Bayek. And it just shows that I really do love the death scenes in this game, because they do so much creative freedom in order to make them so unique, so that it never feels like you're doing the same villain. And now, number 2 on the list. Yeah. The final boss of the game. Yeah, I said Flavius was the final boss, but technically second to none. The second in command and the guy who brings Caesar into the order is the Jackal, aka Lucius Temius, who we fight as Aya. And the boss fight is really, really, really good. Mostly because he's got the chain weights that he swings around. And it's just a blast to fight him. Mostly, and it kind of sucks that Bayek wasn't the one to get rid of him. But after the end of this, we end up getting rid of Caesar. And he kind of explains more on why bringing in Caesar. That Caesar is the father of understanding. I don't remember a good majority about the speech because it was so long ago. But all in all, Lucius Temius was the guy who evaded us after we got rid of Poltinas. And after that scene, I wanted to get rid of this guy so quickly, and I'm glad that Aya was the one to do it. And the death scene itself is also really, really good. Him insulting Aya, what's going to happen afterwards, and all honesty, I can't say enough about this guy because he's in another list I have planned to do, and all honesty, fantastic end of the game. I will admit that. Mostly because he didn't have a piece of Eden. There was no BS. It was kind of in a Colosseum-ish location, so it made the battle even better. So yeah, Lucius Temius did a great job of being a fantastic final boss, and a lot better than your actual boss, Flavius. So maybe you earned a promotion in death. Oh, wait a minute. We also get to fight him a little bit at the end of Curse of the Pharaohs. Yeah, he's the guy in the Duat section of the Afterlife where we have to fight him again. I forgot that. So he makes 2 appearances. Good on you. And now we've come to my favorite Order of Ancients member from Assassin's Creed Origins. This is a character that, again, it went right over my head immediately as we hunt down the first target we have to go to. Well, if you choose the Hyena, he's second, but he's one of the first of the first 2. In the Naya Delta, in a land near a place called Letopolis, that is a city buried in sand with its architecture somewhat coming out and hoping to rebuild, the Scarab, who is basically an enforcer who any naysayers against the Order or people who try to rebel, the Scarab will stop them, will torture them, will leave them alive with their heads above the sand, waiting for them to die. And all honesty, the Scarab gets up there because I had no clue what was going on. Within Letopolis, we meet Tahaka, who is the ambassador of the area and the guy who wants to rebuild Letopolis, an ancient lost city that he sees as being worthy of being redeemed. And we help him fight a lot of bandits. And it's enjoyable, and this guy knows a great deal of the Scarab because his father-in-law was tortured, not on behalf of the Scarab, and had his, tongue removed so he can't spill any secrets. And then we meet his wife and his son, which honestly is an enjoyable moment. It has Bayek get a little bit of time to relax and rest beforehand. Instead of finding all the guys to kill and just immediately doing that, we get to see a little bit of a human in Bayek in this. And then it's revealed Tahaka is Tarek, not Tahaka. Tarek is the Scarab. After dinner with them, Bayek was poisoned. Tarek holds him up, and we see a snake ring on his finger, indicating he was playing us the whole time. And then we have our heads buried in the sand. And we see the images of the people we've already killed, and Aya telling us that it's don't give up, stuff like that. And it took me a while to figure out what to do because we couldn't get out of it. We had to call in our horse in order to help. And then we had to retrieve our gear, go infiltrate the temple, and defeat Tarek. And his was the very first cinematic White Room that I really enjoyed in the game. Saying that he could have, with the Order's help in Letopolis, of rebuilding Letopolis, he could have built something that could go on forever. And Bayek kind of comments that his father-in-law could have sung stories of your accomplishments. And Bayek points out a really good point. People are always attracted to a greater power and a greater purpose. We are enthralled in it, and there's no escape from it, which, all honesty, makes a little sense. There are a lot of people that, no matter what they build for themselves, they'll always seek out something greater. And this is one of the few times where Bayek speaks out that he is not doing this so he can feel that will bring him any peace or victory. He's not doing it for himself. And with Tarak's dying words, he says that the Order will remember him as a bringer of Walters, a bringer of cities. Basically, his name will be remembered as someone who tried to rebuild something that was forgotten. And all while holding a scarab beetle in his hand, Bayek simply says to him that he won't be remembered. His name and all of his accomplishments will be gone like dust in the wind. And it's true. Some people spend so much time hoping that their name will be remembered and their accomplishments, when in reality, a good majority of them will just be forgotten in history, only to a said few. As the saying goes, history is written by the victors, and Bayek is the victor, and all the scarab's deeds will fade off into the history books of Egypt. And this is one of the few members of the Order that killing him kind of affects someone else, his family, because after explaining the truth and leaving, it's a sad moment a little bit. And again, in the Hidden Ones DLC, we see the events of what happened. But yeah, Tarak is my number one for the Order of Ancients in this game, because the way he acted so generous and kind to us, even though he was trying to poison us when we first met him, I believe, we get to understand his goals of why he wants to do it. To build something great, and to build something so his son could be proud and continue on. Even though he was an Order of Ancients member, it still goes to show that underneath the Order, they are still people who believe in the goals that are set for them. And that's why Tarak is number one. He was the first one that I chose to go after, and it went right over my head, never thinking that he could be it. I thought it was going to be his wife, to be honest. You know, joining the Order, becoming a higher-up member, marrying the guy who's kind of a ambassador a little bit, and a guy who's planning on creating this big city. I mean, think of all the possibilities the Order could have had if she had influenced him a little bit. I honestly thought that's where it was going to go, to be honest. But I'm glad I was wrong. Tarak was a fantastic villain and a fantastic member, and he deserves to be my favorite of the Order of Ancients in Origins. And that's it for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Hope you enjoyed the video. Hope all you Assassin's Creed fans enjoy the video. Like, comment, subscribe down below, and join me next week where we end the spooky month of October with the video that definitely sends a chill down my spine and makes me jump every time I play a video game. Join me next week as the scariest, okay, not the scariest, the most terrifying moments, at least for me, come out of the digital game. This is Gamer K, logging out.